Alright guys, I am sorry that it has been so long. I was on a little vacation with my dad in Reykjavik, which was great, but now I have to catch up on work, both at the bar and here at the Me Report. Later on in the episode, we're going to be talking to the associate editor of New York Magazine's Daily Intelligencer, Eric Levitz. And the interview is pretty old. It's like 3-4 weeks old, which is ancient history in journalistic terms, but I was not able to get this out until now. So much has happened since I talked with Eric, and so much more will happen before I edit and release this. Honestly, I kind of regret calling this a current events vlog. You know, unless I get an intern in here to edit the videos or something, I'm not going to be able to pump these out at a rate that is acceptable to news junkies, so. Anyway, before we get political, I wanted to talk about Iceland, an island country that is 20 million years old, which is very recent in geological terms. Like I said, I just went there, and I have a lot of cool footage to show you guys. And yeah, I need to make some space on my phone, so we're gonna do this now. Okay, so I'm gonna give you some fun facts about Iceland while I show you photos and footage from my camera roll, and I'll probably pepper in some Google images in there too. So, oh, and before I wow you guys here, let me give credit where credit is due. Most of the information comes from this, the Iceland Insight Guide. I cannot recommend these things enough. These are, I'll never go anywhere again without getting one of those. I'm not joking. Okay, so the capital of Iceland, Reykjavik, is the northernmost capital in the world. Today, all of Iceland's energy is either geothermal or hydroelectric. This one's cool. Okay, so Iceland is situated on the mid-Atlantic ridge. So as the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates diverge, Iceland's being pulled apart at a rate of 2 centimeters a year, which also happens to be the rate that fingernails grow. That's cool. And then, yeah, as it gets pulled apart, the lava rises and fills the gap. Icelanders speak Europe's oldest living language, pretty much what the Vikings spoke back in the day. Irish monks were the first to settle the island, looking for an isolated spot to meditate. And then the Vikings came, harshed their mellow, and the monks left because they didn't want to live with heathens. Iceland has the longest running parliament in the world, the Alþingi, which was created back in 930 and is still going. Runs smoother today than it did back in the old days. The Alþingi of 1163 got a bit heated and gave rise to what is called the stone-throwing summer, where people killed each other with really big rocks. The Icelandic sagas are regarded as one of the world's most vital sources of medieval literature. They were penned on calf skin in the 12th century. And the authors of the sagas are, technically speaking, anonymous sources. So you just gotta watch out for that. Like, think critically if you're reading the things. We've always had fake history in there with the real stuff. Same with fake news. It's always been a thing. Eric the Red actually gave Greenland its name, and he told prospective settlers that the land was green, i.e. lush, which it was not. That was a PR move, okay? So think critically. All right, so this is footage of me eating hakarl, which is a national dish. It's fermented shark that's hung up to dry for 4 or 5 months, and it's awful. It's truly awful. I had my dad film in case I vomited, because eating gross food is really good content, and had I yacked, it might have gone viral. We don't know. I could have hammed it up more, I think, but that's not me. I'm trying to be real on here, the internet, and you know, maybe that's my problem. Maybe that's why things are going so slow for me. Olaf Tryggvason, the king of Norway from 995 to 1000, was big on Jesus, and he's one of the people who set Iceland's Christianization into motion. He would cut pagan people's heads off and carry the heads around to encourage people to convert, and a lot of people did. Okay, let's fast forward through some of this, because I feel like I might be losing some of you. Alþingi was powerless in the face of feuding chieftains. Norway took sovereignty, then Denmark took it. Catholics and Protestants killing each other. Pirates happened. Eruption of Loki volcano killed 10,000 people. Iceland was occupied by Britain in World War II when Denmark was occupied by Germany. Iceland won independence June 17, 1944, when it was found a member of NATO, 4 God Wars. First democratically elected woman as head of state in 1980. Modern day Iceland has 3rd lowest murder rate in the world. It's ironic because Viking blood. Here, okay, this is good. A lot of movie magic happens in Iceland. Batman Begins, Interstellar, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Prometheus, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and Game of Thrones. All have scenes that were filmed in Iceland. And that's just naming a few. Okay, so last fun fact, I actually shot something in Iceland. That should be obvious at this point. I shot a father-son docudrama set in and around Reykjavik, and I'll go ahead and show you a clip of that because it's my show and why not. So this is a short montage that happens halfway through the film when it becomes apparent that I will not be able to finish the novel that I brought along, Blood of Elves, because there are just too many distractions. All right, let's see it. Okay, so now without further ado, my weeks-old interview with a journalist whose work I read regularly, Eric Levitz. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to talk with you.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of your daily Intelligencer articles. So this is actually really very cool that you agreed to do this. I actually copy and paste a lot of your work into my Evernote app, and I parrot your arguments at my family. From the Deep South.
Well, the one thing that I really hope to accomplish with my journalism is to make people fight with their families more, so that's, really good to hear.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that was a very awkward moment for me. I think he was joking, but I'm not 100% sure, so yeah, that's why that moment was weird. Okay, so proceed. So the Democratic Party appears to be very mobilized right now and unified in its antipathy for Trump for obvious reasons. But here's the big question I keep hearing, and I haven't really heard a solid answer. Or if I have, I don't remember because I've been... Not really. I was just... that was my impersonation of Bill Maher because he loves to remind us how he smokes marijuana. So... Yeah, so I've always thought that politicians should leave the muckraking to the Fourth Estate, but these days it's just so easy to score an applause break if you diss Trump for being unfit for office. It's so easy, because everybody knows he's unfit for office, whether they want to admit it or not. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? What should the Democrats be doing?
Yeah, that's the big question, and I think there's more than one right answer to it. I think that... I am sympathetic to the critique of Hillary Clinton's campaign that she did not have enough of an affirmative vision, that it was too much about Donald Trump being unfit for office and too much about, what kind of nation are we? We're better than this. We're better than electing Donald Trump, and not enough focus in her paid messaging on exactly how she wanted to change the country for the better. At the same time, so I understand why that, sort of critique is wandering into analyses of the Democratic Party now, where in Congress the Democrats are much more about opposing Trump than they are about putting forward a clear affirmative vision. But I think there are reasons for that. One being, that there are divisions within the Democratic Party. You have a wing, the activist base, and the core of the party in really heavily blue areas that are interested in pushing for universal programs that would massively expand the welfare state.
Sorry, another thing, I should note that since our interview, Eric spoke to Senator Chris Murphy about a clear foreign policy vision for progressives that stands alone and isn't defined by its opposition to other policies. So I recommend checking that out. All right.
And then you've also got a corporate wing and a moderate, affluent wing that is not interested in seeing taxes go up substantially and is more concerned about the deficit. And so getting these people to unify around a single program is, a challenge, whereas it's a challenge that's not necessarily necessary at this point because Democrats don't have the power to do anything. What they do have the power to do is to try to mobilize opposition to what Trump is trying to do, and there is unity within the Democratic Party. Not everyone in the Democratic Party agrees on everything, but pretty much everyone agrees that a racist reality star should not be president of the United States.
Amen to that.
And so in that sense, I think that it makes some sense to focus on Trump and to go for those easy applause lines, as you say, because it had worked fairly well for the Republicans. The Republican Party had divisions, as we ultimately saw in the primary, but when they were out of power, it was about how Barack Obama was a Kenyan socialist trying to destroy the fabric of our great republic. Not always, the different Republicans used less inflammatory language to describe that basic sort of accusation. And that worked for them. They took back the House in 2010, they took back the Senate in 2014, and they took back the frickin' White House in 2016 with Donald Trump. So
Eric, your article, "The Filibuster Deserves to Die," was one of the only ones like it I read, and it kind of bummed me out, to be honest, because the filibuster is by far the most interesting part of the Senate. I mean, that filibuster scene in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is the only part of my high school political science class I can even remember. But yeah, so I mean, can you sum up for my viewers why you thought the Republicans going nuclear for Gorsuch wasn't as bad as a lot of people made it out to be?
Sure. So, I mean, it was bad that the Republicans went nuclear for Gorsuch in the sense that Neil Gorsuch is now on the Supreme Court, and he is, by some measures, the most right-wing member on the Supreme Court, maybe except for Clarence Thomas. He has written a book against assisted suicide that has very heavy implications, that he is against abortion in all forms. He has made some just disgusting rulings with regard to labor rights, and he also is very skeptical of the regulatory state. So yeah, him getting on the bench is bad if you have at all a progressive worldview.
I do.
But the filibuster, a lot of writing about when Republicans were going to nuke this filibuster, even in the mainstream objective press, treated it as this objective thing that the filibuster is good and it's bad to see the filibuster go. It's a sign of dysfunction in our government. When really the filibuster is itself a form of dysfunction. When the founders wrote the Constitution, they were, aristocrats who were they wanted independence from the king, but they were very skeptical about mass democracy. They did not want to have a situation where the poor could vote to redistribute their wealth to them. So they put in a lot of checks into our government, checks on majority rule, the Electoral College being one of them. But they also, the three branches of government, all these checks and balances, you had the courts that could strike down things, whatever. They did not think that the Senate should have a supermajority, which is, that you should need 60 votes in the Senate to pass basic legislation. They considered it and they decided against it because they realized that their system that they had designed is already full of choke points, and that adding another one makes it really hard to pass anything if you need 60 votes in the Senate to just pass basic legislation. So they wrote into the Constitution that you need 60 votes to affirm treaties, or you need a supermajority to do a set of things, but not just passing regular laws. So it's not a constitutional thing. In fact, it actually contravenes the intentions of the Constitution. Beyond that, it also historically has been used to frustrate progressive governance. So the reason why we couldn't pass anti-lynching laws when that was really a crisis in the South was because of the filibuster. You had enough Southern senators that could obstruct that, and that was also true for early civil rights legislation. So basically, the point that I'm driving at is that the Republicans abolished the judicial filibuster so as to put Gorsuch on the bench. And a lot of news outlets were speculating that, this is bad because the next thing, what if they abolish the legislative filibuster, which is the 60 votes you need to get any legislation out of the Senate. And, in the immediate term, that would be bad. It would allow Republicans to get more of their agenda through more easily. At the same time, in the long run, it's probably good for progressives because the filibuster, legislative filibuster, hurts liberals ultimately when they're in power more than it helps them when they're out of power. And this is because, progressives want to expand the welfare state and expand government programs. And Republicans want to shrink down the welfare state. And the biggest obstacle to shrinking the welfare state isn't really the filibuster. It's the fact that people generally like programs, at least universal programs, once they're enacted. So Republicans want to get rid of Social Security, and they've tried for a very long time, but George W. Bush couldn't even, get it through the House because there are so many Americans who like their Social Security and are willing to fight for benefits, once they receive them. Whereas when Democrats had full power in 2008, they lost their filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, and they were ultimately they did get Obamacare through, but they couldn't get a public option. They couldn't get a more aggressive version of healthcare reform because of the filibuster, even though arguably I think that would have been more popular, or like a Medicare for all or a bigger Medicaid expansion. The most popular parts of Obamacare tend to be the most socialist. And so I think that in the long run, if Republicans ultimately kill the legislative filibuster, that's going to really be helpful for Democrats when they take power again someday, if we live that long.
What do you think the most damaging thing the media does is these days?
I think one of the most damaging things the media can do, and I've been guilty of this, we have to move so quickly in the digital media age. We have to publish so quickly. And what happens with that sometimes is that we do actually publish, fake news. We do get things wrong. Specifically with Trump, the thing is that his behavior is so outrageous that if you have early reports of him doing something insane, where if you had a report about Barack Obama, slapping a 30% tariff on Mexico because they wouldn't build a wall or whatever, you would subject it to some skepticism before running with that claim as true because an anonymous source told the Associated Press this or something. With Trump, he does not have the benefit of the doubt as much from the media because it's so easy to believe that he would do whatever crazy thing is being reported that he's done.
I keep interrupting. I'm sorry. This is just too good. The notorious political strategist and provocateur Roger Stone sent Eric a tweet not too long ago that said, "Never once did I say Jared Kushner was in the Illuminati. Retract or admit your fake news at Stone Cold Truth." And stonecoldtruth.com is Roger Stone's website. On it you have Stone Zone TV. You got a lot of red letters here suggesting the content is of special significance.
Public reaction to my special Friday night marinara sauce and the subsequent recipe that I put up for seafood linguine leads me to tell you what we have done tonight on Stone Cold.
Yes, Stone Cold Truth Radio. There's a shop where you can still get Hillary for Prison teas for $14.99 if you're still adamant that she should be behind bars for the emails or the Clinton Foundation stuff. Then you got Stone Zone. Wait. Okay, no, he just used that twice. Alright, so this is kind of what I was talking about with the Icelandic sagas. When you're taking in such loud content, you have to use critical thinking skills if they're available to you. This site, just the design, the bold colors, the high contrast, it doesn't look like the truth to me. I imagine the truth looking more like this. Sorry. Okay, Eric Stern, one of your pieces, you criticized the media for celebrating Trump's missile strikes on the Syrian airfield and called out the reporters for projecting their own principles onto Trump and crediting him with flattering motivations. And I agreed with your assessment there, I think. When I realized we literally couldn't know what was going on in the man's head? Cinco de Mayo 2016. Okay, so my question here is, what do you think is going on in these reporters' heads when they posit out loud that Trump has noble intentions?
I think that there is a desperate longing for normalcy among a large section of the American press corps because it is not a comfortable position for reporters here to be constantly in the adversarial mode. The press does not want to be the opposition party. They don't want to have their coverage of the Republican president be like almost uniformly negative, because it validates the right wing's critique of the mainstream media and compromises their ability to be viewed as neutral umpires, and thereby, cost them money, because you lose a whole section of potential readers, who lean right, and so they really look for any opportunity to say that Donald Trump, has done something good. That they're really desperate for it. The problem is that Trump has done so many objectively bad things, and this is, he accused his predecessor baselessly of committing a felony. He called the media the enemy of the American people. He's threatened to disband courts. He says bullshit, noxious bullshit all the time, and the media really has no choice but to, report it, and report it in a somewhat critical way if they're going to be at all self-respecting. If they're going to do that all the time, then when Trump does something that actually gets bipartisan approval, like his missile strike in Syria, which is, its own fucked up thing, but that was one of the first things that Trump did. That, earlier that day, Hillary Clinton advised a very similar response in an interview that she gave. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi had relatively positive things to say about it. So Trump has just done something that even Democrats are complimenting him for. You, as the press corps, are going to want to take this opportunity to, call it like you see it. And hey, Trump did something good here, obviously, because there's Democrats and Republicans saying it was good. And so it's a little bit complicated with Syria. One of the things that I wrote about in that article was that there was a New York Times piece that suggested that this was not a... So there was the chemical weapons attack in Syria, and Trump, for a few days, was not doing anything, and it heightened sort of scrutiny on whether who's really going to be this isolationist president, like he said he would at certain moments on the campaign trail. And also there's this it highlights the Russia angle that he's dealing with, because Russia is aligned behind Assad. And so you could see there being a very cynical motive for Trump to do this airstrike so as to dispel, the criticism that he was getting from the media about Russia, prove his independence from Putin, and make the foreign policy establishment that surrounds him very happy. So you could see a very, very cynical motive for doing it. This New York Times piece suggested that it was not cynical so much as a emotional reaction to him seeing the footage of dead children in Syria and saying, "This is bad, I got to do something." Initially, the day after the strike, I was very skeptical. I just couldn't understand why, how do we know? And why are we picking something where Trump is acting out of empathy rather than total cynicism? And so I was very skeptical of that kind of news analysis. Further reporting suggested that it is actually possible that it was an emotional reaction to those pictures, which I don't think is necessarily any more comforting. This is Trump argued for years that he was against the United States policing the use of chemical weapons by dictators, that we need to focus on terrorists, that this is not really a concern for us. When Assad committed a much larger chemical weapons attack years ago, and Obama was thinking about taking action, Trump was relentless in tweeting that we should not do anything. So he had this very defined worldview, and then if the president can just see pictures of dead children on television and decide that, this is bad, what's happening in Syria is actually bad, and completely change his foreign policy, except, of course, for actually letting Syrian refugees into the country, anyway, the volatility of that the president, that we're going to have foreign policy dictated by the president's emotional response to watching Fox News is not comforting in any way. And it's a little bizarre that a lot of media establishments seem to suggest that this is actually like an encouraging thing, that Trump went to war on the basis of something he saw.
So I'm trying to read this book called Corruption in America. It's gone pretty slow. But yeah, the general idea is that the framers had a far broader definition of corruption, and the Supreme Court started whittling that down in the 70s, eventually leading to the Citizens United case, and now we have Trump profiting off the presidency in plain sight. So yeah, I kind of wanted to know your thoughts on that. Like, do you think we can go back to a stricter definition of corruption, or do you think that ship has sailed? And also, do you think the Fourth Estate can somehow make a less flashy, less profitable public servitude cool again?
I don't even know what counts as corruption that matters anymore. I think that maybe if Democrats take back the House in 2018 and there actually are investigations into how Trump and his family are using their political platform to make money for their businesses, then maybe we will actually have reassert norms against corruption. But right now, you've got, Ivanka Trump getting trademarks from China the same day that she meets with the president of China. And, immediately after that, suddenly Trump is saying that China is not a currency manipulator and that they're actually doing everything they can in North Korea, and we really shouldn't give them such a hard time after campaigning, for 2 years on how China was killing us and they're murdering us. So the corruption is so in your face right now. And there used to be, I think, as you're referring to, like this norm in American politics that even the appearance of corruption is so undermining to our system of government that, like, that's not acceptable. Like, even if it wasn't, like, your decision wasn't actually motivated by corrupt, incentives, even if it looks that way, that's not okay. And obviously that notion is not at all applicable. As for what the Fourth Estate can do, I don't really know. I don't know if it's our job to sell public service as a something worth aspiring to. I think that we should enforce norms of what public service should look like or has historically looked like. We should criticize when leaders deviate from those.
Okay, I think headlines are super important because that's all a lot of people read. And I think the headlines on your articles have been pretty decent from what I've seen. This one, Trump may make visitors hand over their social media passwords. That article is super well written, by the way. That headline is a detail that reasonable people might find crazy or alarming, but it's not emotional in and of itself. Does that make sense? Am I making sense right now? Yeah, sometimes I don't know. But yeah, basically, I think emotional headlines dumb us down and they make us more agitated and reactive as sheeple. So I don't know if you know this, Eric, but I'm a writer too. I write these gonzo screeds for the HuffPost blog, which I was naive enough to be proud of until recently. Anyone can do that. But yeah, my last one was actually Fear and Loafing at the IMATs. I went to the International Makeup Artist Trade Show with drag queen extraordinaire Madeline Hatter, and I went in face as like a water nymph boy geesh look, which was cool. So, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not in very good company on that site. A lot of the articles just seem kind of there, but it doesn't seem like the writers take too much pride in their work. My stuff is all pride, so. But yeah, where was I? Okay, yeah, sorry. A super easy example of what I was talking about, the trend in emo headlines. It's from one of Huffington Post's articles about the United Airlines debacle. Here it is. Man violently dragged off plane after United Airlines demands seat for crew. What is that? Is soap opera? What is that? The adverb is gratuitous.
I think violently is an okay adverb in this situation, to be honest.
Eric, you're kidding me. Come on. I'm not saying the act wasn't violent. I'm saying the adverb is gratuitous here. I mean, sure, you could argue this vlog is gratuitous, but I'm not masquerading as hard news here. You see what I'm getting at? United Airlines demands seat for crew. Okay, I get it. There are bad guys in this article. I don't know. I feel like I need to find whoever wrote the headline and give him some diazepam. It's obvious he's really shaky on the job and he doesn't trust the reader to grasp the gravity of the situation, even though there's an embedded video in the article. I don't understand it.
I think that
I'm sorry, but the verb dragged is sufficient here, Eric. It follows a human subject, so shouldn't we just go ahead and let the readers connect the dots? Don't they need to learn to think at some point? If a human is being dragged, shouldn't we be able to infer that something dehumanizing is happening? You don't drag human, you drag a burlap sack full of horse feed. I mean, no, this is an honest question. Can you gently drag an unwilling participant?
I suppose, you know, if the person were unconscious or very passively unwilling, you could gently drag them.
Eric, come on. All right, whatever you say, man. The CNN one, that reads, backlash erupts after United passenger gets yanked off overbooked flight. See, that one I can get behind. That one, it's more professional. There's no adverb, for one. I can see that whoever wrote this probably read On Writing by Stephen
Hey,
King.
listen, I think I actually, I have to go to do other things, but it was really good talking to you.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, it was great talking to you. I know you're busy. So yeah, that was my interview with the associate editor of the Daily Intelligencer. Check out Eric's articles at nymag.com. Like I said, a lot has happened since that interview. Trump has been keeping him very busy. So, okay, so that's pretty much it. But I did want to read a passage from Andrei Sapkowski's Blood of Elves in closing, because I thought this part was pretty fitting. Geralt sat up and looked at her. We're witchers, Triss. Can't you understand that? What's there to understand? The enchantress tossed her chestnut mane back. Everything's crystal clear. You've chosen a certain attitude to the world around you. The fact that this world might at any moment fall to pieces has a place in this choice. In mine, it doesn't. That's where we differ. I'm not sure it's only there we differ. The world is falling to ruins, she repeated. We can watch it happen and do nothing. Or we can counteract it. How? He smiled derisively. With our emotions?